I love it. All right. Well, we can see you now. We can see your presentation.
Fantastic.
I love it. Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Good to be here. Thank you, Liz, for that. Again, thanks for it's wonderful to be here in all our virtual glory. Our L&D Care's original mission, right, was to encourage people in our industry to rebuild our practice together. So let's co-create our future, like we talked about a little bit earlier, and to grow our practice into a modern function for the needs of our workers and our businesses. So thank you for becoming part of our movement and for joining our Career Growth Summit this week. Together, there's nothing we cannot do, I firmly believe, to make the future of work definitely a more human-centered one. So today, what I'd like to talk about is a playbook for the digital age that I've put together. I'm going to talk a little bit about why we need a new playbook for the digital age. So, but first I'd like to say just a little bit about myself, Brandon Carson. I've been in L&D more than 20 years now, and I'm currently the Director of Learning at Delta Airlines. My team supports our global airport operations around the world. In 2017, I wrote the book you see on the left, Learning in the Age of Immediacy, about how the digital age impacts business and talent development. This year, I'm publishing a follow-up to that book, which is kind of the spirit of today's presentation for you. It's called L&D's Playbook for the Digital Age. And it really asks us to reorient our practice to become more relevant, meaningful, and impactful as we navigate the largest scale job transformation in all of human history. And we're kind of on center stage with that. So anyway, both books are being published or are published by ATD Press. The playbook will be out in July of this year. Okay, so let's get started. I look at L&D as being at an inflection point. So what I'm really talking about when I say inflection point is the fact that we need to take a comprehensive look at our practice, what our priorities are, where we sit in the org structure, who leads us, and what our capabilities are what our capabilities are as the world around us changes so rapidly. It's not just the digital age, as we've discovered over the last year, which I'm mainly going to talk about, but it's also about just everything that's happened since the pandemic. It's a daunting and challenging place to be where we are today in workplace learning. We are navigating a lot of what Liz mentioned earlier. We're navigating a lot of uncertainty. And believe me, nobody handed us a playbook for a pandemic. So I strongly believe that this is what is forcing us to look at our practice and to think about what I like to talk about as a new playbook, one based on the dynamic needs of our workforce in this age, but also a more human-centered, innovative, and adaptive approach to learning that requires us in a lot of ways to completely rethink our practice. And I mentioned this in the opening, what Satya Nadella said in last year in June about Microsoft undergoing 2 years of digital transformation in 2 weeks. This is really true. And it really resonated with me because I feel like a lot of our L&D practices have also gone through this digital transformation that was forced upon us as the world locked down. But what I see really facing us is the pivot with a capital P that all of us have had to make. So our training operation at Delta, for example, includes a significant amount, pre-pandemic, of course, includes a significant amount of in-person training. We conduct live classroom training in airports across the world. We lead on-the-job training sessions around aircraft and with the equipment used to service the aircraft. So moving that to virtual and figuring out how to qualify our workforce on using the equipment and servicing the aircraft away from the equipment itself that they need to learn how to safely operate was daunting, to say the least. And so I think that the next several years are going to have to be about enabling and adapting to virtual work for our corporate teams, right? So that happened almost overnight for us. That's going to continue. All our plans and playbooks were washed away by COVID on how we train. We had to go into business continuity mode. And especially for us at an airline, like I said earlier, we're an essential service for the nation. So it was really a big challenge. And if we consider the confluence of the digital age and the pandemic together, it's not too out there to think that the next 5 years for L&D will be much more transformational probably than the last 50 years. With that being said, these are the three challenges I see in front of us to navigate: increased complexity, exponential acceleration, and a newfound responsibility to our businesses and our audiences. So those are the areas I'd like to focus on for a little bit in this part of the talk. So navigating the fact that our world and our workplaces are going to be even more complex as we move through the shifts that the digital age has brought us. Complexity in the design of the enterprise itself, and how the workforce is evolving and needs to adapt to the fundamental changes in how work gets done. Because of that complexity, we're going to have to traverse lots of different things when you think about it. So the first thing, look at the shifting demographics. There are now up to 5 generations working alongside in companies, and there's a significant baby boomer retirement wave going on right now. It's dramatically affecting companies as tenured employees are retiring in droves. And if you think about it, the longer careers as well. So some people will be working for 50 and 60 years of their lives. We now have the 6-decade worker because we're all living longer, right? And while we have much longer careers, we're going to be dealing with the continuing shrinking of the shelf life of skills, now between 2 to 5 years. And so when you add to that the training of robots and humans to work together, we will see the rise of teamwork over individualism. We will focus more on the employee experience than we ever have, as the workforce demands more from the companies in which they share labor with. And then acceleration. We're facing an acceleration unheard of in human history. The road we were on before the pandemic was quite transformational in its speed. But now, after the effect of the pandemic, business is accelerating even more exponentially in the areas of technology integration, customer experience, and service and product design. If you think about it, it took the telephone almost 80 years to gain ubiquity, but just 50 years for us to connect 2/3 of the Earth's people to the internet. And as Ray Kurzweil, the director of engineering at Google, has said, once a technology becomes digital, it can accelerate exponentially. So don't think that 100 years in this century will see 100 years of acceleration. The next decade will probably see 100 years of acceleration. And this acceleration will really test our abilities to prevent chaos and confusion in the workplace. And it will also test our company's ability to succeed in the hyper-dynamic business environments where market share is very volatile. And then responsibility, which brings more awareness to how we develop a high-performing and more inclusive workforce. We have to figure out how to embed learning opportunities deeper into the work environment and to forecast future capabilities and enable continuous learning. And we must play a role in helping to define the company's responsibility to its workforce and help construct a fit-for-purpose, human-centered operating model for the enterprise. So we need to start formulating this new playbook based on that complexity, acceleration, and responsibility, right? We need to integrate it into our overall learning strategies. It begins with what I call the 3 R's. We need to reset and adopt new practices for how we design and deliver learning experiences. Even though the crisis and through the crisis of the pandemic, the initial chaos, training operations didn't cease. Many teams found themselves needing to create virtual training strategies when they were required to abandon in-person training. And going forward, we have an opportunity to take this test or take this reset and decide what aspects of it are permanent. We need to rethink our mission, vision, and operating principles to reflect the evolving needs of the business and the workforces that we support. This is a call for a ground-up review of how we're funded, where we sit in the org structure, how the audiences we support best learn, and the skills that we have on the L&D team as well. Let's don't forget ourselves, right? So we have to rethink our own skills in the capabilities that we have. And we need to rebuild. We need to expand those capabilities for increased digital learning, virtual facilitation, learning analytics, and coaching and mentoring, just to name a few. And so I kind of pose this question: what's the most significant dependency the business has when it comes to digital maturity? What's the first thing that pops into your mind? The thing that keeps CEOs up at night, I would say, is probably the workforce and its ability to execute on the digital strategies that every business is formulating, that they're formulating. Right now, your CEO is more than likely not confident that the workforce has the skills to perform, and this is a daunting challenge for the organization. So given that, there are three fundamentals. So only the companies that embrace the digital age and appropriately prepare for this journey will survive and thrive. To successfully navigate our workforce and our business through the twists and turns, we must accept and act on these three truths that define success for companies in the digital age. Technology will continually disrupt. It will accelerate at an exponential and often uncomfortable pace for us. New business practices will rapidly evolve, and we must accommodate the pace of change. And L&D must be the primary driver of the learning culture. A learning culture is a great tweet that Liz showed earlier, Liz and John showed. A comprehensive culture of learning is required to extract the quality needed from a high-performing workforce. L&D plays a pivotal role in these three fundamental truths. So when I say technology will continue to disrupt, I'm saying that L&D must be willing to rapidly test new technology. We must build technology acumen in our practice across all levels. We must reframe existing problems based on advancing technology. We must invest where appropriate in a manner that drives scalability and speed to market. And we must place a premium on practicality in the application of technology to solve real problems for the workforce. And this includes like work systems, processes, constraints brought on by traditional organizational structures. We all live through those every day, a lot of us do. Every company is integrating technology at a rapid pace, and year over year shows that investment in technology is far outpacing investment in L&D and in the L&D function. So companies must question how the work gets done and identify gaps at various levels to construct a seamless environment where risk is valued and protected with appropriate guardrails. Leaders at every level must realize that as the company evolves its business practices, work will grow more complex in the short term, so strategies will need to evolve very quickly. And then let's look at the culture of learning. So skill shortages in the digital age are massive, and the company has no choice but to build capability within its existing workforce. Most of the talent you need is not available to you. You must have a reskilling and cross-skilling strategy for your company. Many of the skills necessary do not exist within the confines of the company, like I just said. And in some areas, some of these skills don't exist yet at all. It's even more difficult to build your strategy on the idea of buying talent on the open market. It just may not be realistic. And we must make the changes necessary in our function to operationalize a culture of learning and bring these programs forward. So overall, I'm saying there are three critical requirements to improve and modernize L&D's ability to drive business value. And the first one is investment in L&D must increase. Most CEOs, like I said earlier, are increasing significantly their investment in technology. The majority of those same CEOs are not significantly increasing investment in training their workforce to the parity of the investment in technology. Too often, L&D is funded on headcount combined with program level needs. There must be investment in training and new skilling at parity with the impact of the increased investment in technology. We need to look at restructuring and repositioning L&D For it to proactively respond and lead the workforce skills pivot, it must be repositioned in the enterprise. It must be moved into the strategic planning process, have its scope and span of control broadened so that it is involved in overall work planning. And it must have a direct line of reporting and accountability to the CEO. New skilling for the L&D team is necessary as well, like I talked about earlier, so that it can move beyond just preparing the workforce for the job shifts, but also consult with the business on workplace reconfiguration. And then we must rescope. The most significant impact of this age on the workforce won't be the number of jobs lost, but the ability of the workforce to execute within the new parameters of work. A significant number of jobs will involve humans and intelligent machines collaborating, so L&D must train both the people and the machines to work together. We will have new job architectures, which will break the mold of skills-based work focused just on individual capability. We'll need to rely more on multi-skilled roles driven by teams that must collaborate to get the work done. And if you look at reskilling, it's a core capability, in my opinion, for any organization to offer reskilling opportunities to their employees. Talent pools are getting smaller, not bigger. You need time to transition the workforce to its capabilities needed. We are entering a state of crisis as we must migrate millions of individuals to new skills. Although technology has forever altered the world of work, we are not facing a revolution of work itself just yet. We are facing the acceleration and a shift of how the work gets done. The rapid dissolution of current work processes, tasks, job architectures, and compensation models, as we collectively know them, are beginning to alter our very expectations of what work is. The confluence of the pandemic, technology, and employee expectations have disrupted all work processes, thereby changing the economy of work. And what is being created is a new digital labor economy. And the disruption cuts across every industry. Change will not come as incremental alterations to which we can easily adapt, but rather fundamental, potentially destabilizing transitions that will require substantial investment, agility, and new strategic thinking. So the fundamental truth in front of us, we must act to develop and execute the transition to digital now. While it may take a decade or more for technologies to significantly impact most industries, the infrastructure must be put into place to reduce the skills gap and prevent massive job losses and an uneven distribution of capabilities. Every L&D team should be devising the digital skilling strategies to ease the transition and become the strategy that business and the workforce so vitally needs. So that's my, hope it didn't come off as a lecture, but that's my presentation about the urgency. And I hope you got the feeling of urgency in my voice there. But here I do have an example that I'd like to share with you of a playbook I put together not too long ago for my team. But I also have a collaborative document I call Changes Needed for L&D in the Digital Age that I'd like you to be able to link to. And you can take this document and download it and use it for yourself. Or you can contribute to the document like so many people have that is helping just share information about what we need to do to make better in our practice. So see if we have any questions, comments, or concerns.
I love it. So thank you, Brandon. That was awesome. This was, I think, like you said, the invite and really putting out what is that difference and how are we understanding how the world of work is also changing, what our role is as learning is really one of those key imperatives as we look at what are the things we could do and what are the things that we really need to be doing. So I'm going to go over to the Q&A. And one of the questions there was, what was the third fundamental truth? All right.
The third fundamental truth of, let me go back to where I had it here. We must be the primary driver of the learning culture.
Yeah.
That's really key. And to your tweet earlier, you showed me that. I loved that, because that is what we have to integrate, instigate, develop, create, however we need to go about doing it in our cultures, in our organizations. I think L&D is the primary driver of that learning culture and helping it proliferate throughout the organization.
I couldn't agree more. And it's really going in also to, you know, how are we rewarding? What are we recognizing? And oftentimes, you know, there's a great quote by a marketing professor, Scott Galloway. He says, innovate, but don't monkey with my profit margins.
I love Scott Galloway. I love him. Well, that's our critical, our critical challenge is we're building the plane while it's flying, right? L&D is on, you know, that's our responsibility. A lot of times we can't stop what we're doing to rebuild our infrastructure necessarily. And so I say being an L&D, especially in a scaled organization today, is the hardest job in the organization. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So another good question that came in was, what is one challenge trend keeping you up late at night?
Good question. And for me, it's my team's capabilities. We are, especially the business we're in, we're reinventing the entire industry because of what happened last year with the pandemic. And so we're being asked to do so many things that we weren't prepared to do necessarily, but we're also having to re-envision what this entire industry is all about. And we're having to rethink and rescope. And so it's our own capabilities that keeps me up at night. How quickly can we develop ourselves to be proactively supportive and to help drive business value?
That's, very well said. And we will definitely be touching upon that more this afternoon. So another question came in, which was, what is the most innovative thing that your L&D team did to shift last year?
So I mentioned earlier how we were really an in-person operation, right? Because we're working around aircraft. And so we had this funny situation where we were moving to virtual as much as we could onto the Zoom platform, which we all liked. And then all of a sudden Zoom had some kind of security breach or security lapse of some sort. So IT shut that down and we had to move to WebEx, which was then like 2 days we had to learn a new platform. You know, while we're still doing this training, because we qualify people in the airports to do their job. And what I mean by qualify is when they log into their shift, the system checks the LMS to make sure they've completed all of their FAA required training before they go to work. So they can't operate if they haven't done what we need them to do, right, from a qualification standpoint. So it's very critical, right, what we do. It's business necessary. But we mainly do that qualification in person. So we had to move to a virtual like quickly. And so the most innovative thing we did was the scrappiest thing, using FaceTime and distance to qualify people on aircraft training. It was hard, it was rough, it was scrappy, but it was verifiable enough for us to do. So innovative doesn't necessarily mean you always have to spend a lot of money. It's how scrappy can you be in that moment of need, right?
I love it. I think that is one of the tweets of the day, is like, how scrappy can you be in the moment to really fit that need of what needs to get done? And it's you know, it's not even pretending there's a box there. Saying, okay, what do we need to do?
Exactly. It was like a lot of machinations behind the scene to make this stuff happen, which I think a lot of learning teams probably have been through the last year. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Brandon, can I ask you one favor? Can you share the link? So we will be sharing the link today. We'll also put it in the event feed. And we look
I'm going to go out of slideshow mode and I can copy them and paste them in the.
Brilliant.
This one's really the document I think people will like. I like the contributions we've been getting on that one. And then I'll share the playbook example as well.
Awesome. Well, and I think one of the greatest things about, you know, sharing these different practices is you get so much inspiration to say, okay, hey, how, you know, just taking an idea and building upon it is one of the wonderful things. So share and share alike. We can all really learn and gain from each other.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Brandon. Absolutely awesome. We will be most certainly continuing this discussion today. Thank you, everyone. Wonderful questions in the chat. And we will continue, as this is our learning journey. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this area, which I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's one of the most exciting and the most important areas of not only business, but really also that aspect of how are we helping people get into that space of understanding their potential and their capabilities, and that fun aspect, what it is to learn. So thank you, everybody. We will see you out there. And there is right now an icebreaker together with Ashley. So have some fun.